Hey Tay man, how you doing? I thought I would send you this screen recording instead of just sending over some screenshots and some text. I think it's much easier to see if I sort of take you through it um, on this recording. So this is the tool as it looks at the moment. Still a bit to do, but it's come a long way, I think. So this is the new dashboard. So new card, upcoming earnings. This shows upcoming earnings. It will default to upcoming earnings in the next week. I'll probably add something similar to what I've got here in the seasonality tool, just so you can go 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. But I mean, if you want to start doing that, I think the screen is a better place to be. But this is kind of a nice snapshot of what's upcoming. Just like we have on the seasonality card, the headers are sortable. So if you did want to have a look at upcoming earnings that have the best score, you can sort by that. I'll fix these, but you can sort by score, and then you can see at a glance, kind of like this is a pretty strong performer, consistency 100%. Okay, that's interesting. From a lotto play perspective, we can have a look at the tool at the ticker. So, oh, my mouse has run out of battery. So this is the new ticker page for earnings history. So there's a few different cards here, but the first one, which is actually the components of the score, well, this radar chart is the components of the score, gives you like quite a nice quick overview to look at. So these are the components that are made up of the score, made the score up of for now. So the first one is consistency. So the same as the seasonality consistency, it's the number of times it moves in the positive direction over the look back period as a percentage. There is a slight difference to the way I've done it on the seasonality screener, is that I've long biased the consistency, whereas on the seasonality screener it's in the direction of the average. But because this is being used for a score, it needs to be directional. So I've got a consistency in there. Gap up propensity is very similar to consistency, except it takes the gap size as part of its calculation to work it out. So you can see this was a very consistent stock, but it's slightly better gap up propensity. So if we go down and look at this, we can see that when it gaps up, it tends to gap up, or has a habit of gapping up pretty hard. So we've got like a 17% jump, 15% jump, 11% jump. So that's the difference between consistency and gap up propensity. Fade resistance is its ability to hold its gap up or even push past it. So it's basically punished if it gets faded, rewarded if it pushes up and holds its original gap. So this is actually a very good fade resistance score. I think I might need to play about with that at the moment because you don't really tend to get much better than that, but maybe it's a fair representation. So for example, you can see that like here we've opened at +7, we've closed at +14, opened at +17, closed at +15, which has held itself pretty well. Opened at +15, then pushed and closed to +28, opened at 11, +18. So it's got a pretty good fade resistance in there. The next thing I've included is the +7 day performance. This one I need to have a bit of a play around with as well, because I think it's a bit too generous, maybe. But it's quite a nice one to include, I thought. So if you were thinking about taking a lotto and you took one, or you were deciding about taking one, and it didn't gap up, it gapped down, maybe not so aggressively, but gap down, this would be quite reassuring to you to see that the +7 day performance of this stock tends to be positive. So maybe it's worth just holding and seeing whether you can kind of play the probability of that pulling back and having a green on the +7 day. And then we've got EPS beats, so just whether it beat estimates. So we've got EPS beats here. So this stock, for example, Axon, over the last 8 out of 8 quarters is beaten 100%. Average gap is the average open over the look back period taken as an average. gap volatility is expected. Price percentage move in a 1SD, and one standard deviation, and then the overall score is kind of a combination of everything included in this radar chart here. So the way I've weighted it at the moment, I've got consistency at 30%, gap hour propensity at 30%, fade resistance at 20%, and then two smaller components, the 7-day performance and EPS beats, because I think that's a pretty good way of laying it out. So this is actually a very strong play here potentially for that. 89 is a very high score. Okay, so next card, valuations. So I know you said kind of like if you were using this as a research tool, then you want to find the best executors, but also obviously valuation is important because you don't want to be going in something insanely expensive. So the ones I've included, and they're included in the screener as well, is the price to earnings, price to sales, and the EV/EBITDA. That's just kind of like a nice snapshot. And then we've got the earnings reaction table, just like you have on the one you're using at the moment or sending the screenshots on. Fairly self-explanatory. And then we can change the look back quarters up here as well to see more or less. So that's the new ticker page for the earnings. What I was going to do as well was, now we have kind of like two tools combined, and we're going to be combining more and more, is build like a kind of like an overall ticker page which includes all of this data. So you can just search Axon, it will have this stuff here, it will have the seasonality below, and then when we add more tools it can kind of have all the information in one, and I guess a ticket overview one as well at the top. So it'll include like more general information like the company description, etc., just to give you kind of like a nice full overview. So the new earnings history screener is here. Looks very similar to the seasonality screener. I've tried to keep kind of like a consistent look throughout, but here we are here. So I'll probably default to 6 months rather than 2 weeks, just because then you see every company really, because every company is going to be reporting in the next 6 months. But for now I'll show this. So look back events, just like in the seasonality screener, it changes the averages. Industry and sector, I know you said you were interested in from a company research perspective. So let's have a look at real estate, for example. Well, just because it's not, let's go 3 months. So real estate, these are all fixed. Let's choose real estate. And then industry is taken from the stocks that are currently being shown. So inside real estate, we've got these different industries at the moment. So if you're particularly interested in industrial, let's say, for example, then we can have a look at the companies that are in that space, and then find our best performers in there if we're using it as a research tool. Let's go back to, it's a little bit slow at the moment. I haven't done the optimization, but market cap, pretty standard. Score, laid out the same way as we have on our seasonality, in brackets, and we've got the same color coding going on. We can then play about with some of the other columns there, and I have the valuations in here as well at the moment. I'll have a little play with this design because it's a bit hard on the eyes at the moment, I think. And I'll also add the filter you mentioned about the moving averages, like we have in the seasonality screener. So I'll drop that one in, and I'll have a look at any other maybe technical indicators that we want to include. If you have any other thoughts on filters you want to include, just let me know. The voice note you sent actually was very useful from a perspective of, rather than it kind of being the way we've done it and talking about like what we want to have, it's cool to hear how you want the tool to be used, or how the tool can be used. Because it's when I'm doing the designing, I'm thinking about, then am I achieving, or is the tool achieving the outcomes we want, the goals we want, or how we want to use it. So it's quite a good way it's quite a good way to communicate kind of like the goals. Yeah, so in terms of valuation metrics, I've only included price to sales in the columns. I didn't want to put the other two in just because I didn't want it to get too busy and then kind of be a bit hard on the eyes, because we've got the valuation metrics in there already. So if we did want to filter, I think price to sales is probably a good one to have in here. And then you can then go into the company and have like a deeper look if you do find a company you're interested in, particularly if it's in a particular sector. What have we got? Nothing coming from the next 2 weeks. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Let me know what you think, and if you have any ideas. Excuse me. If you have any ideas on additional things you want to add, let me know. It's probably a good time at the moment. But I think this is coming together pretty nicely, to be honest. I can see how this would be insanely useful. I mean, it's definitely something I'll be using. I already do use the seasonality screener, but you are right. Seasonality screener is more of a every now and then tool. It's kind of something you look at, get an idea, and then that's kind of in your head. You're not playing purely on seasonality because it's just not something you do. But this one, definitely I can see it being so much more useful. You're right on execution. So if you've got a company you're interested in, I think this is a pretty great way on kind of getting more confidence in that company. But yeah, let me know what you think. Don't worry, I know you said sorry about the slow replies. Don't worry about those things. Enjoy your holiday this week. No need to kind of rush the reply. I'm just cracking on with it anyway. I've got to do the optimization, that kind of stuff. Change the layout, all that kind of thing. So don't worry about that. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any different ideas, more ideas, things you think could be changed. Different things you'd want to use the tools for. Yeah, cool. Thanks, man.